where fucking, everything, like we're all gonna die, right? And that's gonna happen. And she was just like, well, yeah, of course. I was like, yeah, but we also never die. Like there's a part of us that is eternal. And
Yeah.
she was kind of like getting it and stuff. I was like, oh, have you ever heard of the Bhagavad Gita and like the story of Krishna Arjuna? Are you familiar with that at all?
A little bit, but please, yeah.
So basically, Arjuna is this king, right? He's the king of a giant kingdom, and there's this attack, like another kingdom is attacking him, right? And they're trying to take over his entire kingdom. He's watching people be slaughtered in front of him, and he has to go out and fight. And basically, Arjuna was a very like he had a strong heart. He was really caring, and he walks up to the battlefield and he says like, I don't want to do this. I just want to go up in the mountains and meditate. It's kind of like the Lion King, like Simba, where he just wants to play in that world. And so he's like, I just want to go up and meditate. I don't want to kill anybody. I just want to be, peaceful. And Krishna told him, he goes, he basically tells him two things. Number one, death is unavoidable. And that's like a truth of life, right? Like we all know we're gonna die. That's like an unavoidable fact. And number two, you can't die. That's what Krishna tells him. He's like, he goes, the soul is, he goes, you can't murder anybody because you can't harm the soul. He goes, you cannot harm that which is, intentional. He's like, the soul doesn't get wet, it doesn't get burnt, it doesn't get dry, it doesn't get, all these different aspects. It doesn't get killed, it's never born, it's never dying. And he goes through that, and it basically explains him, go back in the battle, fight, do your duty because it's your duty to fight, and then but do it knowing that really nothing ever changes, like in your
Wow.
yeah. And then he, of course, he does, and he ends up, so it's kind of the full um transition from the spiritual trying to detach from the world and being like, oh no, I don't want rainbows and butterflies, like don't show me anything, to back in like, okay, yeah, there's shit happening, but I can look at it from a different perspective. Like I can look at it from that higher perspective. And that I was talking to her about, like that's why I like traumas happen around me and terrible things happen, but I can usually keep my center. I guess the hardest part though for me, and you could probably relate, is like the relationship side, because it's literally intertwined with your energy. It's intertwined, which, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit today and just kind of pick your brain, and we can go from there.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
absolutely do it. This is awesome. This is great topics.
All right. All right, Joe. So what is our problem with relationships now? Why are so many people uh unhappy in relationships or unhappy single? Like I know maybe like 1% of people who fit this category of in a happy relationship. Everybody else is either unhappy single or unhappy in a relationship. What is our deal here? What do you think is going on?
I think some of it is humans were just messy, right? And then the other piece of it is so many options. I was just talking to somebody about
Mm,
this the other day. I mean, think back to dating like 50 years ago.
right,
You met people in your community, you met
right.
your neighbors, you weren't jet setting across the country like I am to go on a date, dating apps,
Yeah,
social media. So a lot of it is, I think, this like false belief in so many options available,
right.
right? And then there's that
Yep.
the grass is greener. And then there's just our mentality a lot, not everyone, but many, where it's just very difficult to see things through, And
Mm,
the problem with dopamine is we get hits in the fantasy, right? So if I'm going to create a
mm,
business or something and I start daydreaming about it, I'm getting those hits of dopamine and I don't even have to take any action. So the same
mm.
thing with relationships. I can be in this relationship with this other messy human and we're doing the best that we can. But then I've got all these options coming in and I can just fantasize about the potential without I have to put in the effort, deal with their bullshit, like all the things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of perpetuating this belief of, yeah, just cut and run.
Right. And we're in that perpetual honeymoon stage with every relationship. And then as soon as that like drops off, it's, yeah, that's such a good way to put it, and such a thought-provoking idea. It kind of reminds me, do you know who Charlie Munger is? He's Warren Buffett's right-hand man. He was real, but he lived to be 102, 103 or something like that. But he was with his wife for 70 years. and they asked Charlie, what is the key to a long-lasting relationship? And you think he's going to be like holding hands, connection, like whatever. He said, low expectations. And just nothing else. And I was like, that is fucking probably so true. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is wild to see how if we have these super high expectations of people, but then where does the line draw, right? Because
Yes.
because sometimes we're just like accepting of things that may not be for our heart's highest good. Like, where do you see that line drawn, right? Because I do see the value in sticking it out with somebody, even if they're kind of like not exactly what you want. But I also see the value in exploring and trying to find that happiness, if you will, in another human. Like, I don't know, like what, that's such a
It's a delicate balance for sure. But the thing that comes to mind for me is the let them theory. So it's this idea of let them. If they want to leave dishes in the sink, let them. If they want to go out with their boys, 3 nights in a row, let them. Like all these things, like let people be who they are,
right,
and then stop trying to control everything. And then also the reverse is true. Let me. So let me have my standards, right? Let me
right.
have my expectations. Let me have my wants, needs, desires. And so that's when a relationship kind of becomes this beautiful compromise, right? Because
Mm,
when we compromise our core values, that leads to resentment, right? And that leads to
mm,
us betraying ourselves. I did that
mm,
in my marriage. There was something that
mm.
was a hard no for me and I allowed it. And I was very angry at him, but who I was really mad at was myself for
Wow.
allowing it to go on. So I think it's when you ask what is the line, it's those hardcore non-negotiables, right? And then the rest of the time let them. Like I work with a lot of couples and this is one of the biggest things I see. It is the quintessential nagging from the wife, right? All
Mhm.
the time. And so I get to go into people's homes and actually observe them, which is super cool. And I
Right.
see this all the time. It's like the guy is going to make dinner one night, right? So he's making the fish and she's like, you're going to burn it. That's been on too long, blah, 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 right? So
Mhm.
when we talk about expectations, wants, needs, desires, for me, when somebody is doing something that doesn't impact me, let them, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
then course correct at the end. And she's like, well, he's going to burn the fish. I'm like, great. Then he can take you out to a nice steak dinner after he screws up dinner. But like,
100%.
again, let them. Let
Yeah.
people be who they are, but
Yeah.
then also let me speak your
Right.
truth and hold your own boundaries because that's the worst betrayals when we do it to ourselves.
I love that. And there's so many things that you brought up in that story. Like, as a guy, number one, like if somebody's trying to tell me how to cook, that almost takes like demasculates me in a sense because I'm like, I fucking know how to cook. Like Jesus, or whatever. Like you're gonna get like, and oh, you don't have enough faith in me that I can't pull this fish off. Like you really think I'm that big of an idiot, you know? And then, but then on the other end, the woman is kind of like, I heard this the other day, and they were talking about the idea of the over controlling woman and the laid back man, right? Which is kind of like our stereotypical, the guy's just kind of whatever, and then the girl's like, no, 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 you got to do all this stuff. And what people think is those two people balance them out, right? Because they're like, oh, the laid back man's teaching her how to be laid back, but really, she is trying to feel safe, and if he's doing all this shit, that's just like idiocracy and not like, and not giving him space to actually do the right thing to show her, no, I can do these things. I can make you feel comfortable, whatever. Like it's going to make her more controlling and him more detached, right? So it's going to eventually just keep pushing them. So they're not really balancing each other out like the yin yang. It's more they're just going further and further apart until she can have some trust for him and he can actually show up in the way that he should. And if he's not, then that's, something as well. But yeah, that is the couple story of the century, right? Like just the burning of the fish.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up safety because that is so important. I think women want to feel safe and men want to be appreciated, so to even go to the
100%.
you're going to burn the fish story is like, hey, I'm trying to do something nice for you. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
a lot of things go, they're expected, right? So they go unappreciated. People stop feeling valued. right? And then we create this dynamic of adversity between couples, right? When really that's
Yeah.
supposed to be your partner. I mean,
Right.
we were doing this experiment in a treatment facility that I worked at. And the whole idea of it was catch them doing something right, because all the time the staff was
Mm,
looking for people doing something wrong, right? We're going to write them up. We got to control them because they don't
yeah.
know what they're doing and we have to keep them safe and blah, blah, blah. So it was crazy when it was like catch them doing something right. And of course, you and I both know you always find what you're looking for. So then
Right.
all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, these clients are helping one another. Look, they got their laundry done. Oh, they're up on time. And then all of a sudden it goes into this like, I appreciate you, I see you. And
Right.
if couples could have that for one another, that like, I'm going to assume the best in you until you prove me wrong,
Right.
that would be magic.
No, totally. I love that. And what that is really well said. And I think from the collective consciousness of a guy speaking, like if I could say one thing that women could do better in relationships, it is literally that, right? Like appreciate me and appreciate the good things I do, right? Like in a sense, because that will make me want to do more of those things. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I did do this for you. I guess I will make my bed or whatever, right? Like it starts building on itself. That would be my cry from like the guy's side, I guess. Um, do you feel like what are you sensing from like the female collective consciousness right now? Like if they could get something through to the guys out there, what would that be?
You know, one of the biggest things that I have couples do is just first thing in the morning before lifes, take just 5 minutes together because women just want to be seen and held.
Mm,
And
mm,
they want you to be present with them.
mm,
Even
mm,
just 5 minutes, listen to her stories, ask how her day is, going to unfold. Like, take that time to just check in. Like, I am 100% here with you. That
mm,
alone would really help because the rest of the day, it's like you're on your phone or you're with kids or work stuff's coming up. So just even that precious pause to be like,
mm.
I am
I see
connecting
you.
with you. Eye gaze, listen, give her your full attention. That's a big
Mm,
one. And then the other one is what not to do, right? And I hate to bring this up. It feels so catty and insignificant, but it is such a big problem in most people's relationships is the freaking Instagram shit. It's like stop
mm.
telling random strangers they're hot on social media and tell
Yeah,
your wife,
yeah, 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 yeah.
like
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
stop liking 18-year-olds photos in bikinis and tell your wife she's hot. You want
right.
your marriage to go better. Like stop
Yeah,
doing that shit
sure.
first of all.
Sure. And they've got to feel like they're the most important person in your life. Like that is so, so, so true. I love that. And no, that makes perfect sense. And I think the first thing you said was really profound because yeah, we can go days like that. I know in my relationship, I'm so busy that there are times when it's like, and that was one of the things we did in therapy was have that moment to really stop and try to make sure, okay, I'm here with you. What do you want to talk about? And and not be scrolling through Instagram at the same time, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. But couples therapy, I've gone to one-on-one therapy and stuff, and obviously do like my own therapeutic coaching or whatever. But couples therapy, whole fucking different animal. Like I did not like that. I don't think they liked it. I don't think it was like the most unpleasant thing. And I guess I don't know because there's somebody there confirming your inadequacies in front of another person, right? Where like if you're in one-on-one therapy, you can kind of gaslight the therapist. You're like, yeah, I'm this great human being, and I'm sure they know that that's not the case. But like, you don't necessarily have like the person who's with you all the time, like, no, 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 he's a fucking asshole, and here's why. Like, in
Yep.
the same thing. So yeah, that man, how do you do that? Like, I want to kind of hear your insights on that as well.
You know, I I really work with people, even couples individually. It's very
Okay.
rare I'll bring them together, but if I do, the number one thing is to get them present first. So let's say somebody just had a traumatic event happen and they're completely hijacked, adrenaline, cortisol screaming through their bodies, heart rate's up. you don't want that person to tell you what just happened in that activated state. That's actually how we traumatize ourselves. We need to
Mm.
get people calm first in their bodies and then tell the story. So it's the
Mm.
same with couples. If you're both like ready to kill one another and then you get into a dialogue, it's just going to be blame, you deflect, like whatever your mechanism is, and you're going to just repeat those patterns that you always do,
Right.
which is
Right.
why
Right.
you never get anywhere, right?
Right.
Because the reality is typically one person is not right or wrong. We're interpreting an event very differently. So you've got
Right.
two people, you know, whose egos are like, I'm right. But the reality is usually both people are right. And then you have to say, do you want to get better? And that's a question
Mm.
I ask my clients. Like, do you actually want to get better? And it's confusing to me because I have actually met people that don't. Like
Yes.
peace and tranquility and not having issues feels so uncomfortable to them that they actually don't want to get along. So
Right.
that's the other piece, is like having two people get present with one another, with themselves, and then do we really want to resolve this? You know, like before engaging in any kind of dialogue, like, I love you. I choose you. You're my partner. And I want to work this out. And I'll tell you the best thing I have learned. My buddy Josh Wenner just taught this in a course I'm in. He said, if you're going to have conflict, say the story I'm telling about this is.
Mm.
The
Mm.
story I'm telling about the fact that you never do the dishes means that you don't appreciate that I'm cooking and you're not helping
Mm.
me. The story
Mm.
I'm telling about the fact that you're always on your phone is, and then all of a sudden, like somebody's defenses aren't quite as activated.
Right, right. Because I'm sure we're looking at it from the level one, like, well, it wasn't such a big deal. I'm on the phone and or whatever, right? But like it means to that person that it means I don't love you, right? So then when
Yes.
you find that out, you're like, oh shit, like I didn't realize this little thing that was irking you, or I don't pick up my clothes, and that means you don't, you're not like present or aware. Something like yeah, I love that because a lot of times it's not the action itself, which we can, that's usually what will, like when you're having those type of fights, it's about the action, but hardly ever about the layer two way of action, what's actually going on with that action that's pissing that person off, and what that is showing them.
It's about getting below the below, because Course in Miracles, right? We're never upset for the reasons we think we are. We have to
Right.
identify what is the meaning I'm attaching to this. Because then it's like, you're always on your phone. I don't feel important in your life. And it's like, oh, no, no, no. I'm on my phone because I'm trying to build our business so that I can give you this life, and I want
Yeah.
to take care of you. And it's important for me to be the provider, right? So then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, now we can get somewhere. Is when we stay on that surface level discussion
Mm.
and we're not really trying to solve anything and we're not present, right?
Yeah.
We're like our 12-year-old self is marched into battle and
Oh
it's like, no, that's not going to go anywhere. That's awful.
yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
just, it's not counseling, it's refereeing and it's
Oh
awful.
yeah. That, and I've been in those sessions, like when it's like, well, then you did this and you did this, and we're like both getting more and more angry, and the counselor's like, whoa, 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 like, okay, and that's exactly what you said, stay present. And I was just like, no, no, you're not hearing my side of the story, like you don't get it. But yeah, it's bringing us back. Okay, let's bring back to the baseline. But I guess the hard part about it too is like in different, like in your situations and different things you've had so many different relationships and so many different trials with them. Do you think we ever get to a point where we find our quote soulmate and just ride off into the sunset? Like,
I think there are many different soulmates for us. It's just like when you hear
mm,
somebody say, "Oh, I'm trying to find my purpose." What? Is it just one? Where is it?
right.
Where'd you lose it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
There's so many different things you can do. And as we grow and evolve, I think different relationships serve us for that period of time. And I love the idea of a traditional relationship where you meet and you get married and that's your person for life, you ride or die. Yes, I believe that is possible. Obviously, I have not found it yet, but I do believe it's possible. And I can look at all of my relationships and say, wow, the version of me at that time was really supported through that
Yes, yes.
connection. And,
Right.
a lot of growth through pain and a lot of learning what I don't want, but a lot of being forced to learn how to take care of myself in ways that I never would have if I had just graduated college, met my person, and had somebody there, like, so
Yeah.
a lot of my inner work came from those devastating moments when you lose that person.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's possible. And I believe that, like, the more we know what we want. I mean, I did a relationship inventory last year that took me 6 months. I went through every significant relationship of my entire life. Like, back to when I was 11 and my first little boyfriend, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Every
Mhm.
single one. And who did I become in that relationship to keep it? What was
Mm.
significant? Like, you just really dive in and you start seeing your patterns, which is
Mm.
beautiful, because then you go, okay, I keep attracting, right, the same person. So what is it in me that is looking for healing, that keeps gravitating to these painful experiences, so that I can heal it and not have to involve anybody else in the process?
Yeah.
Really
Oh,
the goal,
totally.
right?
Yes, and that is such a good point. We'll definitely have to dive into that. Like, why are we so attracted to and we'll come back to that. Why are we so attracted to our shadow side? But I like what you said there, and the point I want to bring out, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like if we look at, like, do the means justify the end, right? Like, the means is the relationship or relationships. And sometimes we look at the means and saying, this is what I'm going for, as opposed to the end, which you're saying the end is growth. Like, that is the whole point of our life. That's the whole point of existence. And so if you're looking at, oh, the point of my life is to find that person and live out the rest of my days until I die with that person, like, you're kind of missing the point, right? Because you're not seeing that growth is my point here, right? Growth and transcendence and finding who I am and all these other, like, intangible things rather than the tangible. And the same thing goes with materialistic goals, right? Like, everybody knows a Lamborghini is not going to make you happy or this, but at the same time, the process of trying to attain that thing brings out so much growth for you and so much change. And it's like the Lamborghini is going to eventually disappear. You're not going to have it anymore. It's going to, who knows what'll happen, right? Like, everything material is temporary, but the growth it took for you to pursue that goal or whatever, it was the actual metric that you should be measuring. So it sounds like you're kind of like taking the metrics away from this romantic ideal back to reality, which is growth. And I love that, how you said that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because I just recently shifted my mindset on dating, and I was like, okay, I'm in my Lamborghini. I'm driving there. I know my destination. I'm headed this way. Passenger seat is open. If you're cool, come with me. If not, I'm going anyway. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I love
so,
that.
so different than, oh, I need this other person to fulfill me, that Jerry Maguire nonsense of you
Yeah,
complete.
yeah.
Like, no,
Right.
be a complete person. And then it really is. It's all about the journey, not the destination. We used to teach this all the time at our martial arts school because we'd see it all the time. People would get their black belt and then be depressed out of their minds for a few months, because
Oh, how funny.
this thing you've been working for years and years and years, and black belt testing, 8 months of hell, whatever, it's
Right.
done now. Now what? So
Right.
it's like, no, who we become every step of the way is so critical. And I was just rereading Man's Search for Meaning, and
Mm,
it talks so much about that, like having purpose, having connection. Like, if you're doing that in your relationship, you're doing it. And I
mm,
also want to say, at some point the plant is dead. No amount of sunlight,
mm,
fertilizer, water is going to bring it back. So it's important to be willing to tell the truth as well.
right.
Like, yeah, I do believe that we should fight for marriage after taking vows and all of that. I'm not saying do this carelessly, but at some point, it's like, if I have to stay so small to
Mm,
stay in this, it's a no. It's a no.
right. Right. Because you're no longer growing. And then you'll get, again, that's like a value thing. If that's your value to grow in life, like you said earlier, you're going to get resentful because what was the thing you said, something about your values? Like, you're not, you're not honoring them or something. I
Yeah, I
forget.
mean, you're literally betraying yourself at the dinner
Betraying.
table,
I love
truly.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that is super profound. That's yeah, I love that. So back to the toxic, why we are so attracted, and I fall into this category too, right? Like I've always found the person who is I don't know how to describe it, but it's like there's that aspect of and I was talking about it with my friend last night. The girl, she was talking about she finds these projects in these guys, and then she's like, oh, but they're so hurt, they're so, but then they're also like have all these issues they haven't worked through, all this trauma, and she wants to like, but that's what she's attracted to. Where there's a part of me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but in my head, I'm like, if you found a healed guy, you probably wouldn't want to be with them. Like you'd probably not have like an attraction. And what is that like within us that it, and is that maybe like I don't know. Yeah, I just want to kind of dive into that.
Well, it's a great question because if she found somebody healed, what would her role be? She's decided
Mm,
my role in relationship is to be the nurturer, the caregiver, the therapist. I'm going to nurture you back to health. So if you're already healthy, then what am I here for? So, I
mm,
mean, you could probably look back and see, though, there was over parentification in that child's upbringing where that was how they became significant even within their family system, is they're the one that always
mm,
shows up and helps. So some of it is what's actually familiar for us, and then the other piece of it too is if I've had a painful experience where I was trying to be that caregiver and it didn't work, then I'm going to unconsciously keep repeating that pattern, trying to master it. So it's Freud's mastery concept, right? So what I couldn't master that caused me pain, I will keep unconsciously recreating, trying to get a different result to heal that original wound. So
sure.
if one of her parents exhibited behaviors that were, difficult, traumatic, painful, whatever, and I was trying to make them better and I was never enough and I could never make them happy, then I'm going to do that with people, with men
Right, right.
specifically,
Yeah.
to try and heal that original wound. So some of it's familiarity, some of it's our personality, some of it comes to power and control. If I'm dating people I believe I'm above, there's a sense they won't leave me if they need
Mm,
me. I mean, there's so, and I'm not saying this for your friend. I'm just saying like there's
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
examples of what could be going on.
that makes perfect sense. And yeah, no, there are so many things to unpack with what you just said there. And I'm trying to think of one of the things that you touched on that really um yeah, the idea, well, when you're talking about it, like if you what is my role gonna be? I almost think that that comes back to the concept of like a false purpose, right? Like this unhealed person that I'm gonna heal is yeah, it makes me feel like I'm doing something good, but really I'm just scared to do the big thing that I should be doing and helping, or whatever. And so this person almost is my cop out for my bigger purpose of doing something and in a bigger way, I guess, in a sense. So it's like and I've noticed that in my life when I start losing the fulfillment of the things I'm growing through or helping people through or just, the growth I've had in my own life, I am more attached to the person who is unhealed because that's like, oh, now that's my cop out false purpose. There's my role again. I can get that sense of I have a purpose, but it's not like really, you know what I mean? Does that kind of resonate?
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think to take it even a step deeper too is it's a way to avoid intimacy. It's an unconscious block to
Mm,
intimacy. If I pick people that I know can't meet me there, and
mm,
remember also that if I'm picking people who can't go there, it's because I can't go there either.
mm,
I don't
mm.
want true intimacy because I'm not ready for it yet. So I'm going to pick people where I know we're going to stay up here in the weeds.
Right, right.
And I have a girlfriend, we were talking about her. She's been on 50 first dates. I swear to God, this girl has like been in the battle, man. She really on the dating apps put herself out there.
Yeah.
And she's talking to this dude and they went on one date. They haven't slept together and he's talking about threesomes. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
she goes, well, the bottom line is I just like my relationships complicated. And I was like, well, there you go. Great. This is
Yeah, at least you admitted it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
yeah,
I love that. I
awesome.
love it. That is so funny. Yeah, we have that, and I think, and I don't know if it seems to be on both ends of the spectrum, right? Like guys who you'll hear that a lot. Like guys will pick just these really bad situations for themselves, and they'll have everything else in their life, but it gives them that sense. And then girls, same way, right? And the so here's one of the things that I've kind of noticed is, and tell me if this is like true within your girl realm, because you're obviously seeing it from that as well, and like with your friends and different things, is because of social media, because of the ideas that have like, oh, tall, dark, and handsome, right? Like this guy, he's six figures, 6 foot tall, whatever, right? Like they have that idea, and then it totally like takes out 95% of the male population, and then they're all going after this one guy who's like, that guy's just like, I'll just have my pick of the litter, like I'm just having and then they're like, why won't they commit, what's going on with them? Whereas the guy that 100 years ago, that was like their neighbor that they would have, met and fell in love with, that's maybe not 6 foot tall, that maybe doesn't have the, all the credentials you want, you guys could have had a really cool relationship. But now because of social media, it's kind of like the cream of the crop is getting all the attention, and then so many other guys on this end are just getting like not getting any attention at all. And so it's been a really hard, I know, not just for the women, because the women are kind of like in the state of like, God, I've just got this guy who just plays me and blah blah blah, and I'm so annoyed. And the guys are like, I haven't even talked to a girl in like fucking 6 months. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a disconnect happening there. And what are your thoughts on that? Like seeing that, are you seeing that from your end, or like with,
Well, we kicked it off with too many options, and that's
yeah,
exactly it. Like when you have that quintessential guy, right? Yeah, he's not committing for the reasons you just said. He doesn't need to.
right.
I do think that we are attracted to certain types of people, right? And that physical attraction is important. When we think about relationships, four things need to happen. The first one is chemistry. You got to want to have sex with them. But if you are
Mhm.
literally like the only people on this planet that I want to have sex with are 6'4", good luck with that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Seriously,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that feels like a societal like imposition telling you that's what you should want, and not a natural biological instinct of attraction. So I
Mm,
would
mm.
definitely like lower the parameter on the dating apps. It doesn't have to be 6 foot,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the dude
yeah,
of 2 inches, Jesus.
yeah, yeah.
And then when we look at success, I mean, even that is so fickle. Somebody can have the best year of their life and then get laid off.
Right,
So
right.
instead of these, like, I need them to be 6'4", well, are you attracted to them? I need them to be successful. Are they the kind of guy that's like, I want to provide, I'm going to do what is ever necessary to make
Mm,
this happen for us? Like, so again, journey, destination. Like, is this the
right,
person that's going to show up fully? That's way more attractive than somebody that's hitting these, imaginary markers within your mind, right?
right, right. No,
And the
that's
other
so
thing,
profound.
yeah, is like the intellectual curiosity. This is the texture, right? Like, can they introduce you to new things? Do you like doing the same things? Then we've got basic compatibility. What are your argument styles? Like, how do you resolve conflict? Like, there's so many things that are important outside of height and social status that I don't think people are prioritizing enough.
Right, right. That's so true. So, so true. And have you ever seen they call it the female delusion calculator? You ever seen
No.
look that up? Oh, it's like it's kind of funny. So this podcast, which I don't recommend because it's very man oriented, right? And but you get a good take on it. But the conclusions they come to, I don't think are very ubiquitous. They're not like, they're very one sided. Men are right, women are wrong type of thing. But one of the things they'll do is they'll call like a group of girls over there and be like, okay, what is your ideal? And of course they'll name the 6 foot, six figures, blah blah. And then so this guy created the calculator, which is basically you put in all the stats of what these women, and they'll have like 12 women. They all say pretty much the same thing, very similar, and they'll be like, okay, so we're going to take this census data put it in this calculator. What percentage of the population do you think it is? And they're like, oh, 20%, 30%. It's like 0.0001%. And
Wow.
it is, and they're all just like jaws to the floor because they put in qualification. Okay, you don't want them obese. Okay, that's fair. You want them to be this tall. Okay, well, the population, only 10% of the male population is like over 6 foot. So you've literally just downed it by 90%, number one. And then the population of that 10% that makes six figures is like 1%. And then the population at 1% that is actually not married is even
Right.
more, and then you just keep whittling it down and lower. But I like that because it does kind of bring it back to the values that you find attractive as opposed to the external. I've got a Lamborghini, I'm rich, I'm whatever. It's more like, no, this person's ambitious and this person's a protector. Maybe I want a tall guy because I feel protected, but really I'm looking for a protector,
Yeah.
which would be, yeah, which he doesn't have to be tall. Like some tall guys are shitty fighters, and some short guys will whoop your ass. So it's like,
Use
you
you
know,
as a human shield. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But no, that's really cool. And the other thing you brought up is the idea of when somebody is really conscious, you repel unconscious people, right? And so if you are trying to bring somebody into your sphere, being very like self-aware and like calling out things and having boundaries and stuff like that, like you will repel a big portion of the population that doesn't necessarily want to vibe on that level with you. And I've experienced that myself where I'm like, if I'm like in an inebriated state or I'm drunk or something, the last thing you want to do is like go in and have somebody, what's going on with you, right? Like you're like, no, fuck that, I don't want to, I don't want intimacy, I'm in my own little delusional world here. Like I want to just like talk about football or whatever it is. So I think there is some level of that we get scared of people that are really inquisitive on a deeper emotional level, and some people that is like, I don't know, it's like kryptonite to them because they don't want to look at those things, right? They don't really want to go there.
Well, and that's a great question. It's like, what is it you actually want? Like, I work with a lot of high performing males, and they're
Hmm.
like, I want a meaningful relationship. I'm like, you're dating strippers. And that's not to say a
Yeah,
stripper
yeah, yeah.
can't have a meaningful relationship with you, but it's
Right.
like, is that what you want? Do you want a woman that values, these certain things and nurturing and blah, blah, blah? Okay. But look at who you're dating. And then you're mad that she's seeking attention all the time. It's like, well, duh,
Right.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I think it's getting honest too of, no, I just want these casual, mutually beneficial hookups. Great. Be honest about that. And there's plenty of people for that. If you
Mhm.
genuinely want a deep connection, then it's going to be less about those markers and more about how somebody makes you feel and how you feel naturally with them. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing for me when I started saying, okay, I'm going to date people that I wouldn't normally date because my type has gotten me in a lot of trouble. I am
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good at manifesting. It's so damn good at manifesting. I get exactly what I want. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that
Oh.
didn't go well.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go for what I want. I'm going to widen my net, right? And I'm
Mhm.
just going to go and meet different people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were one day wonders for sure, but it was great, and I got to
Mhm.
learn about myself. But all of a sudden, I was like really tapped into my nervous system and how I felt with different people. And like, okay, I actually really want to be with somebody that I'm more at peace with versus that like carnal primal chemistry, which I typically
Mhm.
go for. Like, oh my
Sure.
God, I have to have you like
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
firecracker, that has got me in trouble. I'm like, I want the slow burn. And
Yeah.
actually, the guy that I'm dating now, when we
Mhm.
met, I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be anything more than friends. It was not
Yeah.
this instantaneously, holy shit, this is, whatever. It
Yeah.
was like just this slowly, it enhanced and just, it was awesome. It was so different than anything I've ever had before. It's like the
Mhm.
foundation really was a friendship. And
Yeah.
that's really beautiful too. It's like start meeting people, going to coffee with, go rock climbing, like just find friends,
Right.
and then if it turns into something else, how cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. That is so so true. And just kind of opening yourself up, like you said, widening that net, and again, like I don't think people need to have lower expectations in the sense of just like, oh, I'm just going to let anybody in, whatever. But it's like your expectations shift from the external more to the internal qualities that you're really seeking, and saying like, this is my non-negotiable. My non and sometimes people are like, my non-negotiable has got to be a multimillionaire. Well, that's like an external thing. Your non-negotiable should be he's motivated, he's ambitious, or whatever, right? Like, because that's the type of thing you're seeking or whatever, and bringing that out. But then the attraction's got to be there too, right? Like, so that. And do you think, this is another question, is we were probably, I know when I was younger, like before the internet, right? Like we both experienced life without like social media, right? And then now we're at social media, like that my attraction triggers were a lot more sensitive. Like
Yes.
I thought this chick in my like third grade was like banging hot. You know what I mean? Like she was hot, in my mind. And she, compared to like an Instagram girl or whatever, it's like, so now my attraction triggers are so desensitized as a man, because I can look up all these different women, I can have all these different, fantasies in my brain, that the girl next door is not doing it for me anymore, or whatever. And I'm sure the same thing is probably happening on the women's side, where they're following all these like super good looking whatever, and then the guy next door, they're like, oh, you're kind of frumpy, like I'm not attracted to you. But is it just that we've like desensitized our external state with the internet? Or I wonder, because obviously you need that attraction, but where is that where is that attraction coming from? Is it really an internal state, or is it like a societal projection? Like I noticed that myself when I went to Thailand years ago. When I went over there, like in America, if you're tan, you're attractive. Well, in Thailand, that means you're a worker, means you're a laborer if you're tan. So they view like super pale girls as attractive. And after 2 weeks, I remember seeing this super pale girl and being like, oh, she's so hot. And then in my head, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not even what I'm thinking. Like, I literally just like put this projection, and I realized that the society had changed my mind around what was actually attractive. So, yeah, I wonder where we draw that line, and the really finding, and again, it's probably just self-knowing.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I mean, we're just inundated with images more than ever before. Growing up, you'd see magazines, you'd see commercials, movies, whatever. But now it's like these people are in your face all the time. And I think it's really important to remember even they don't look like that. Like
Yes, yeah,
there are
yeah,
literally apps. This chick was just telling me about like, oh, I use this Liquify app and it takes 20 pounds off me, or the filters and all this shit. Like I
yeah,
remember I
yeah,
was at the Playboy Mansion for like Midsummer's Night Dream Party or whatever, and I'm with some of these girls that were just playmates of the year, and we get in the grotto, and the grotto is super small, sticky, hot, so everybody's makeup starts kind of running, and you're like, oh my god, you
yeah,
don't look like that. You see the
yeah.
cellulite, the acne, you're like, damn, what?
That's awesome. That is awesome.
But here's the problem, right? Like you can have a girl that looks phenomenal on this Instagram shot. Do you want to spend an hour with her? Do you want to ask her about
Mm,
her hopes and dreams? Does she care about people? You know what I mean? So we've
yeah.
made attraction such a superficial thing, right? And then you
Mm,
add in porn, which I love
yeah.
that you brought this up because it's true. Even like 20 years ago, you would have to work so hard as a man to see a woman naked.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you had to work at it. Now you just pick up your phone, you can see whatever you want in any position, blah, blah,
Sure.
blah. It used to be really, really hard. You had to earn it. Now you can
Yes.
just watch porn, blow your load, like it's
Yeah.
so bad for men. Like that
Mm,
dopamine cycle doesn't complete. You didn't earn it. It just, yeah, it's
yeah.
really, really sad what has happened. And
No, that's so true. I remember this comedian talking about that, and he's like, when we were young, and I fall in the same category. Like, you would have to get a magazine, right? And then you would have to like sneak it to your friend, like, and it would go from like this person's backpack to this person's backpack, and then to this person's house, and we're all like sharing the same fucking gross magazine. But it was like a big deal. And then now the kids are like, they're 8 years old, and they're like, oh, you like big boobs? I'm in the feet now. Like I'm over that stage of whatever. Like they're so far. they're into just whatever because it just keeps getting more and more complex of the things we desire. And I think on some level that's a good thing because we're always growing. And like even our lives now, the things that make me happy now that I think I need in my life to have a fulfilled life, like, oh, I need a phone, I need to be connected to tons of people, I need all these things, like none of that existed so long ago, but now it's a necessity in my life. And so we're always going to be doing that as human beings, like getting more complex and more complicated and experiencing more, which I think on some level is good. But when it comes to relationships, it seems like it's really done us a disservice in that. Yeah.
Yeah, the shadow side to all of it for sure, and I think it always comes back to the inner work, right? If we're talking, no matter what we're talking about, it's like do the social media cleanse. Take 9 days. When I went to Nicaragua this summer, I did 2 weeks off social media. It was phenomenal. It was like unplugging the computer, plugging it back in. It was amazing.
Mhm.
Detox your body, detox your mind. Like by all means, take time off porn. Give yourself that reset. It is critical. Do the inner work, like do the shadow work so you don't date your shadow. And I mean, I've been
Mhm.
teaching this for years and didn't even realize I was doing it until recently. I
Mhm.
I met this guy and he was just dangerous. He was the 6'4", dangerous, friends with Dan
Yeah.
Bilzerian, like playboy, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's give this a try. Like
Yeah.
he didn't have red flags. He was a red,
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. But I'm like, okay, well, this will be fun and I won't get attached. Yeah, right. Instantaneously. Like now I'm in
Mhm.
this trauma bond with this person. But it
Right.
was so crazy because through doing the inner work, what I realized is I projected a lot of my unhealed sexual shame onto him.
Mm.
And then I tried to fall in love with it.
Mm.
I was
Mm.
trying to heal myself through
Mm.
his
Yeah.
expression. And that's what I mean when I'm saying like doing that deep inner work. If I need a project all the time and I need to find men that I can quote unquote fix, what is it in me that is calling my attention? And let's do that. Take the time,
Yeah.
be alone, sit with it and stop with the distractions. Like stop reaching for the thing that you reach for that allows you not to feel the thing you've spent your entire life running from.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And I love your authenticity with it because and because I can relate like in the sense obviously I'm married and different things, but there is such a attraction trigger with the wrong type of person that even all experience. And it's one of those things that I think you described very well that you're trying to heal your own shadow, right? Like I'm trying to heal this part of me that's wounded. And so I'll find a super wounded, or whatever. Like, but I love your authenticity here because all of us are figuring it out, right? Like we're all in that mode. We're not out of it. We're in it, and that's what's cool is you can kind of bring those up. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, because the person who's, oh, I've got it all figured out, I'm above it all. It's like number one, they usually aren't. And then number two, like it's just like a lack of I guess self-awareness of seeing that if these people are doing it, I'm probably doing it too on some level. And I think that's a mastery concept that you've gotten down really well to bring those concepts back into your own space and find it. So it's cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just glad I realized it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
got out and didn't marry it because that's what I did last time, and there's a decade of my life. So
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And same, like I'm trying to work on it myself. It's like, but it's a constant growth. And so, yeah. Oh, I love chatting with you. Do you give us some final advice here, Joe, about how we can fix all of our relationship problems in one fell swoop? Come on, Mike's yours. Just kidding.
yeah, here it is.
Here it is. Here. No, but yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, though, this kind of is it. Enter through the upset. Like, use these moments of friction as opportunities. And the second that we do that, we can actually get closer to one another and to ourselves because our triggers are there for a reason. Our triggers are precious indicators and catalysts for amazing opportunities of growth. Because if something is irritating me to that level in you, it's my deep inner work to heal it. And so
Mm,
in relationships, that's where our stuff gets triggered. That's where our thorns get brushed up against, our pain
mm,
points. And so if we can come together and hold ourselves in deep reverence as we do this work together, that's a beautiful thing. If I'm spiraling out of control and I come to my partner and I blame him and I need him to fix me, yikes. Of course
mm,
he's going to run. Nobody wants that responsibility, and nor can he. No one can
mm,
do that for us but ourselves. So if we learn to hold ourselves in that reverence, in an empowered state, and come to somebody and say, hey, the story I'm telling about this is, and then
mm.
we can move through it and we
Yeah.
can come into this arrangement as the compassionate witness. And I love
Mm,
what you said about not having expectations, that somebody is going to do it the way you would, and that's where the let them comes in. Let them be them. That's why you
mm,
chose them. The
mm.
reality is we don't want somebody just like us. That would be an absolute nightmare. That would be so boring,
Right, right.
So embrace one another's quirks and get curious. If we could just get curious instead of offended, we could really use those moments of conflict for beautiful radical growth.
I love that. And so you'll hear a lot of like cliches about like don't get triggered or remove your triggers or different things like that. But it sounds like what you're saying is find the source of that trigger, right? Like why are you triggered? And then that is how you remove it, if you will. Like as opposed to just I'm not gonna be triggered, like I'm a
Good luck
trigger
with
free
that. Let me
zone.
know how that goes for you.
So it's like just bringing the awareness to the cause of the trigger to heal it, and we need awareness to heal. That's the big thing I've realized, and I think people like you emulate this in a big or exude this in a big way. Is you can't have self-awareness without self-compassion, right? Like if you're gonna and I've experienced this on like hallucinogenic trips, I'm sure you have as well. When you
Yes.
start looking at yourself and you're not in full compassion mode, it's fucking dark. It is. You'll meet
Not
the
fun.
no, you'll meet the evilest person you've ever met in your life, and you're like, God damn, I'm fucking Satan, but it's because you're seeing all of because you know your intentions, you know where you're at, you know the fucked up shit you did, like we all know so many negative things about ourselves, and then we're carrying that subconsciously. And if we really go inside and look, we better have some compassion there with us so we don't like destroy ourselves as we look within and think, oh, I am the worst individual in the world. Well, no, you're not. You're just present with yourself your whole life and you see all your flaws and you see all your mistakes. Where like, so I think that is so powerful to just bring that awareness with compassion.
Absolutely. And yeah, I love the way your mind works and where your heart goes in conversation, because that compassion is so critical, in that grace, right? Because it's so easy to be like, you blah blah blah, like I'm still in the middle of a legal nightmare with my ex-husband, and the whole
Mm.
time I'm like, yeah, I get why he's doing what he's doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can
Yeah, yeah.
understand it. That doesn't mean it's okay, but
Right,
I
right.
get it, and
Yeah.
then I also look, where have I been selfish? Where have I been unfair? Where have I, acted out of fear and self preservation without caring who I impacted? We've all had
Mm.
those experiences. So
Yeah.
it's not about making ourselves a piece of shit, but it's just about owning that humans are doing the best that they can. And that is something I really, really, truly believe about everyone, is given their makeup, their trauma, their history, their attributes, like their ability to handle stressful situations. Everyone's doing the best that they can. And again, that
Mm.
doesn't mean that you don't hold your boundaries and standards or hold people accountable, but it's just like all of a sudden it's not personal. It's
Yes. Yeah.
not.
Yeah. And that type of mindset it invites a lot of work because it's way easier to just say, oh, this person's evil, right? Like that's like such a cop out, right? Like it's like, okay, done thinking in the evil box, done. I don't have to think about that again. But like when you're like every single person is doing the best they can, well shit, now I gotta start fucking looking around and seeing what they're doing and why they're doing it and not instantly judge them and put them in a box. And yeah, and put ourselves in that box. I think that is there. People talk about like the idea of hell, and to me, the worst hell I've ever experienced has been looking at myself and seeing the darkness and not being there with compassion, right? Like that is the fucking darkest place a soul can go. Like send me to the flames, right? Like I'll go if there is a idea of that, like send me to that. I'll take flames over looking at the darkness of myself. And so it's just, I think bringing that compassion to that is so profound, and you give it to others as well, right? Like that's the whole idea of giving them the benefit of doubt, but also holding your boundaries doesn't mean you let people walk all over you, which I think people conflate the two. But yeah, really well said, Joe.
Yeah, fierce kindness all day, every day.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I'll stop the recording here, and then let's chat a little bit after this. But thank you so much. This was really good.